Hi, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Wellness Matters. This is a podcast where you can come and listen to so many different stories from different people, different modalities, all on mind, body, spirit. It's something that's kind of been growing for the last couple years. I've been recording now for almost 4 years, and it's been morphing into just like this great place to understand the body, the mind, and the spirit. And I don't know. I love sitting down and talking to people and getting their perspectives and their stories and their niches and what they're doing. But I also love to do solo podcasts. And today I'm going to be doing a solo podcast on my trip that I just got home from 2 days ago. Yeah. So my husband and I went to Texas for 5 days for a little getaway that we are kind of making into this annual thing. Last year we went to Sedona, which was so magical. And this year we decided to go to Austin, Texas. Um, and during one of the days, I went to this all day festival. Now, a festival isn't something that I normally typically go to, but the fact that this person who was hosting it is a podcaster that I've been listening to for 4 years now, 5 years maybe. And she had guest speakers of other podcasters that I've listened to. I knew I just had to go and check these people out in person and see what this high vibin place was all about. The festival is called Your Highest Self Festival. So I went to Texas for 5 days. My husband and I just got home 2 days ago, but I wanted to jump on here and talk about some like aha moments that I had there and the crazy energy that I was experiencing while I was there. And actually, you were experiencing it too. Everybody was experiencing it because of the astrological energy that I'm about to talk about. Now, let me preface this with saying I am not an astrologer. The more I learn, the more I realize I know nothing about astrology. It is like three languages smashed into one. That's what it feels like to me. Like as soon as I feel like I'm learning something, then all of a sudden it's like, what is this aspect over here? And so I do know, however, before I had left, I knew that this really big energy was going to be coming online, especially the day of this festival. And what it was during that time was Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, and Uranus were conjunct in Taurus. Okay. At the same time that Mercury was retrograde, by the way. Now, what does that mean? This is what I have taken away from the videos and the people that I've talked to during this energy. And this is what I'm going to kind of try to dumb it down a little bit for you to understand. Not for you to understand. You probably know more than I do, but what my perspective is on this. So Jupiter is a planet of like transformation and luck and these big huge aha moments, and then Uranus is more like thinking outside the box, and they both were conjunct in Taurus, which means that the Taurus energy is more of the earthly energy and it's very grounded. So you got all this happening. And I guess the last time that this happened was in 1941. But the last time Jupiter and Uranus were conjunct, not in Taurus, but they were conjunct, was in 2003. And like I said, it's a lot of think outside of the box energy. And that's when the iPad came out. And I actually remember that in 2003. I remember my son was 3 years old and he had just woke up from his nap, and my husband came home from work and he just won this really big sales competition. And he came home with this crazy looking thing called an iPad. And it's just wild to me now thinking that when that happened, it was like this technology piece, thinking outside the box. It's going to help, with humanity and all these things. Well, I think it helps with humanity. Anyway, this is the energy that was coming online while I was in Texas. And I think the reason why I was on this like emotional roller coaster while I was there was because Mercury was also retrograde. And I'm sure you've all heard, oh my gosh, Mercury's retrograde. And everyone's like, it's like this big scary thing, which it's really not. But when Mercury goes retrograde, from what I understand, is instead of communicating outwardly to the world. When it goes retrograde, it kind of goes within. Okay. So it's kind of shining a light on old patterns and old things that are no longer resonating with you, or things are no longer working for you. And how can you, with this, the energy of think outside the box energy going on, how can you get rid of those patterns and then come up with something that's more efficient, come up with something that feels more aligned for you? Okay. So even me explaining this seems like it's crazy, right? This all was going on while I was gone, and I was feeling it. And I kind of have this visual in my mind now of what the weather was like while I was in Texas. It was kind of like how my emotions were. So when I first got there, it was kind of breezy and cold and not so nice. And then the day of the festival was complete downpour. Okay. This was an inside outside festival. When I say inside, I mean there was no walls, there was just a roof. Okay. So you're still outside and it was freezing. And I had all of these ideas of what this festival is going to be like. And I get to meet all these, huge podcasters, and I'm going to ask them to come on the podcast, and it's going to be this big, huge thing, whatever. And none of that happened, which was okay. It was, I needed for those things to kind of happen to explain these aha moments that I kind of came up with. Okay. So you got all these, like, the stickiness that's happening, the emotional roller coaster that's happening. Like, I beforehand, before even going to the festival, was going through like some weird old pattern stuff that was happening. Like, do I look pretty enough? Does my outfit look okay? Is my body okay? Like, stuff I haven't felt since, like, in my teens, like old crap. And like what I was saying, that's what this energy was kind of about, especially with Mercury going retrograde, was really looking in on things that no longer align with you, no longer fit with you. And how can you change that to make your life feel like it's fitting better? So I'm going through all this stickiness and yuckiness, whatever, leading up to the festival. And the festival was wonderful. Let me just say that. Sahara Rose, I went to her, it was her gathering. She is a huge spiritual podcaster that like I said, I've been listening to for years. And she had some of the most amazing speakers that were there that I have been also watching and listening to for years. And that to me was like, I could just sit and listen and learn all day, every day. That's what lights me up. That's what makes me so excited, which is kind of like the Virgo in me. That's my Virgo brain, right? It's like more logical. Explain how these things all work. Let me figure it out for myself afterwards, and let me go kind of deep in. But what was one of the aha moments was that these guest speakers all are putting their pants on one leg at a time. Okay. So here I am thinking I'm not good enough. The like old feelings of insecurities and all these things were coming up, and to really make me sit in this muck, right? This stuff that felt really, I mean, there were points where I like literally was crying. Like I thought, oh my gosh, who am I to be here? Who am I to think that these people would even want to be on my podcast? All these like really, I don't know, like deep, dark feelings that I was going through. And after the fact, I went home and I could breathe again, right? The next day I started to, like, things were starting to lift. What I started to realize was, one, I was trying to control this whole situation. And aha moment, you can't control life. I've talked about this a billion times. You cannot control anything. It makes us feel good. It makes us feel safe. However, what is going to unravel is up to the universe, right? Who I'm going to meet that day, how I'm going to interact with it, all of that is out of my control. And I was trying to control it. So, aha moment number one, if you are somebody who is trying to control all the aspects of your life, or even just some of the aspects of your life, is it possible for you to learn to let go? I know that seems like a wild concept, but really, just let go. Stop planning everything that's going to happen. Stop planning how things are going to happen. I mean, I was literally down to, I thought I was planning the weather. I packed all stuff, shorts and everything that you would wear in 80-degree weather. I don't think it broke 80 degrees the entire time we were there in Texas. And we're almost in May. I was looking at the weather, obviously leading up to it, and it was in the 80s the whole week leading up to when we left or when we got there. Then when we were there, it plummeted down into the 60s at some points and even colder. And then, of course, the day that I'm leaving, it goes back up into the 80s. But I was trying to plan the weather. I can't plan the weather. You can't plan the weather. What the hell was I thinking? I don't know. I just had so many high expectations and trying to control everything. And literally, nothing worked out the way that I thought it was going to. But here's the juiciest piece of information. So much more came out of it. So many more aha moments. And I grew as a person for this trip. Okay. And I realize it's just a trip that I took and not a big deal. However, the lessons and the reflecting and the awareness that I walked away after all that is what I'm going to continue to use every day going forward. So I talk a lot about reflection, and I feel like there's so many of us that are just like experiencing so many things, and then we kind of gloss over it like it's no big deal, just to like kind of push it under the rug and get to the next thing. And we're not reflecting. And I have my notes right here that I'm going to read off a couple things that I wrote down on there in this podcast. And I just, if you don't walk away from anything other than this, then I will be a happy person. Reflection is so, so important to your growth as a human being, as a spirit, as where you want to take your life. Because without reflection, you have no idea what your awareness is, like what are the lessons that you're learning. So therefore you can change those patterns. But if you're not looking at the patterns that you're creating, how can you change them? How do you know to change them, right? So aha moment, obviously, reflection is so important, but not controlling is one of my biggest things. And it all comes down to fear, right? We are trying to control so something bad doesn't happen, or we get the most out of the experience, or whatever the reason for control is. It's never the way that you want it to be. So we have to stop controlling. My other main aha moment was stop putting people on pedestals, right? I should feel like the other person that I'm asking to come on this podcast is like, yes, of course I want to sit down with you, right? When I think where all this kind of stemmed from was I've had, people tell me via email, no, now is not a good time for us to meet. No, I'm not going to come onto the podcast, whatever. And you do have to learn how to develop more of a thick skin. Sometimes I feel like I'm in sales and I don't want to be in sales, but it feels like that sometimes, like that yucky feeling. However, I have the power to change that story and that feeling. So instead of sending an email out to a potential guest, and instead of saying, as soon as I send this email, oh man, they're going to be too busy. Oh man, I don't have enough followers. Oh man, they're not going to come on. They've got too much going on, whatever. Instead of sending it energetically out to them that way, I am going to start saying, they will be so lucky to sit down and have a conversation with me. I'm going to make it so much fun, and we're going to go deep, and we're going to have such a great conversation. They will be lucky to be on this podcast. Do you see how the change in the frequency of the email will affect how that person's going to say yes or no? And logically, I have known how energy works, how vibration works. Because, let's be honest, each one of us has sat down to pray for somebody. Why are you praying for them? Because that energy is going to get to them. That's why we pray. And the same things happen when you ask somebody to sit down and have a conversation with you. It's all energy. It doesn't get destroyed. So when you're sending the email out, when I'm sending the email out, I'm going to say, hell yeah, they're going to be so excited to be on this podcast, right? And not think, ugh, they're going to be too busy, I'm not cool enough, whatever my story is of the day, and changing those energetics. Aha moment. Start doing these things in your daily life because energy is real and it is the only thing that there is, right? Energy can't be destroyed. So when you're trying to create an opportunity for yourself, go into it with a higher vibration. So when that person opens the email, they're going to say, oh man, I can hear her excitement coming right through this email. Of course, I want to come on this podcast with her. We're going to have such a great time. So just going over the list here, stop controlling. Stop controlling every aspect of your life. Let yourself ride the waves of life. And it is going to get dark and mucky and dirty and all the things. Those are the lessons that you are meant to learn in those specific times so you can catapult to the next level. You don't want to stay at the same level. How boring is that? I already had a podcast that I talked about how many we die and are reborn over and over again. You can say daily, you can say hourly. 2 hours ago, I was thinking different than I'm thinking right now. And that's such a beautiful thing. And that's why reflection is so important because, like I said, then you have awareness on how you want to stop acting. You want to end patterns. You want to start new ones. And the only way you can do that is through reflection and becoming aware, creating awareness around everything. Stop putting people on pedestals. That's my biggest probably takeaway from that whole experience is because I had put these people on such a high pedestal, it made me such a nervous wreck and all these insecurities, which needed to come up anyways because they needed to die. I needed to feel them, which is another thing that I'm really passionate about right now is actually sitting in the shit. Yeah, I just swore. The shit. I talked in a podcast that I just did recently about how I have had struggles with sleep probably, oh, my daughter's 14. So about 14 years now. And really, if I look deeper into it, which I have, it started when I was a child. And recently I was like, enough is enough, Heather. You're just doing the basic thing that all humans need to do, and that's sleep. And it is a beautiful thing. Stop thinking of it as being terrifying. So the more I'm like having this conversation with myself, I then realized even doing these little pep talks with myself, I wasn't sitting in it. I wasn't sitting in the fear of what if I don't sleep. I had insomnia for a while there, and so that really made my fear like that much worse because I always think if I have a bad night of sleep, then I'm going to go back there. However, I've proven to myself over and over and over and over again that just because I have a couple bad nights of sleep, it does not mean that I'm going back there. And so I have, overcome those kind of things. But when you're in the middle of a slight panic attack while you're trying to sleep at night, it's like, holy shit, I'm going back there. Like you start panicking. Now it's like 2 a.m. and every worst case scenario is popping in your head, whatever. I sat in it. I embraced the fear. I literally did. I was like, you know what? Let it kill me. If this is how I'm going to go, then let it. And the second I threw my arms up in the air and surrendered, my heart rate started to calm down a little bit. I did some inner child work, which I can do a podcast on that as well, because that's actually been the biggest piece that's helping me with my sleep is not dealing, that sounds harsh, is finding compassion for the pieces of me that are like some of the energy I feel like is still stuck at age 7. Some is stuck at age 8. Some is stuck at age 13. Like I was doing some inner child work on my teenage self while I was in Texas. So yeah, another aha moment is, can we stop running from these yucky feelings that we have going on inside of ourselves? And by running, I mean overworking, or drinking too much wine, or maybe, I don't know, scheduling our lives for every single minute to have something scheduled in there so we do not have to feel those thoughts and feelings. And if we did sit in it, what would happen? Like, it seems so scary and it seems so overwhelming. But everything that I know now at this point is I could cry thinking about it. The medicine is on the other side of that fear. It truly is. I felt like the first time I just recently made it through like a panic attack at nighttime trying to go to sleep, and just I had worked myself up so much and I finally sat in it. The next day, during the day, I was like, I can't wait to go to bed tonight. Like, I literally felt like I was on cloud nine because I was like, I can't wait to try this again. Is it going to work again? Or is this just something that worked tonight, but it's not going to work? See how my mind works, right? I start saying, oh, that was a one-time thing. Tonight's going to be completely different. But because I sat in the yuckiest part of the fear, like the worst part, I'm telling you, like a little bit of sweating going on, the heart rate was racing, and I had nowhere to go, right? It's dark. It's 2 a.m. What am I going to fucking do? And when I made it through and I actually did my own self-soothing and I calmed myself down, I really was ready. And I've every night since then. This has been going on now for a couple months. So I really got to jump on here and talk about the inner child work that I've been doing, because it has been the thing that's moved the needle the most for me. And as you know, I'm always having people on here talking about different modalities, whatever. And each one of the things that I have tried and have done has moved the needle. But it's like I've had to have like a buffet of all the things, right? Different concoctions for each person is going to be, it's going to be different for everybody. But the things that I've tried and I've done and I've experimented with and whatnot has led me to where I am. But this inner child work that I'm doing right now, just that I'm coming up with myself. I'm not reading it from a text. It's literally me doing the work. And yeah, it's been so, I don't know what the word is. Like I said, move the needle the most. And I will do a podcast on that soon. But I just want to continue on a little bit more on some of the things that I figured out while I was in Texas in the crazy weather that I was trying to control. And by the time, like the last 2 days that I was there, the weather started to turn around. The sun came out and my emotions were better. I couldn't believe how parallel my emotions were with the weather. How crazy is that? Like, what a crazy analogy. I don't know, example of everything that was happening. And I don't know. Like I said, the energy was so crazy with the way that the planets were aligned and all that. I was seriously feeling the same thing in my body on a smaller scale. So you got the universe is doing all these things, right? But I could feel it happening. And that's why it's really cool to like dive into astrology, because once you kind of know what's coming up, you can kind of brace yourself a little bit and know what you might be feeling. I can't tell you how many times I told you my friend Angela that I've had on here, she's an astrologer. When I'm like going through it, I'm like, Angela, I'll text her, I'll be like, what is going on up there? Because I'm feeling a whole lot of craziness going on. And she will die laughing. She's like, oh my gosh, Pluto's in here. And, this is conjunct with that. And of course, Chiron, this and that. And I'm like, well, how much longer do I have to deal with this? Right. So the astrology piece is, again, another modality that I've just come to surrender to. It's kind of over my head. However, it's never wrong. Like I like, if you ever wanted to really dive into it and think about like the worst years of your life, like the things, just like everything fell apart and you got divorced or, whatever it is, If you look back at your chart and what was happening then, I guarantee you something was lining up in this house that was like, in relationships or with friendships or whatever it is. And you're like, oh, that makes so much sense. So yeah, astrology is pretty deep. So check it out. All right. Some other things that I was kind of feeling while I was there in Texas was instead of putting people on a pedestal, can you put yourself on a pedestal? That was something that was like a big, huge emphasis that Sahara Rose was talking about at the festival was like, put yourself on the pedestal. And by that, I mean, if you're single right now and you think, oh my gosh, my significant other is going to make me whole, or even if you're in a relationship and you're like, why do I not feel so fulfilled and whatever? Why is my partner not doing this or da 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 da? It has absolutely nothing to do with the partner. It really doesn't. If you can put yourself on that pedestal and you can start to date yourself and put yourself on this, I don't even want to say pedestal, but I don't know, love yourself the way that you would a partner, really start to date yourself like you would a partner. Like, I do not have to go out to dinner with my A partner or go on a date or whatever to enjoy my dinner. I can go out to dinner and savor the food and drink the wine if I wanted wine. Um, and sit there as long as I wanted to and not have to feel rushed or, whatever it is. Why can't you start to have this love affair with yourself? Really start to make yourself feel good the way you're expecting a partner to do that, right? Sit in silence, do the reflection, take yourself out on a date. I mean, we talk about self-care, but self-care is different for everyone, I feel. Like, I love to go to a spa, but I've got a lot of Taurus energy, and that's what Taurus is all about, like sensuality and beauty and all that. But if that's not something that you're into and going roller skating is, then go roller skating. If gardening is your thing, then go garden. Don't wait for somebody that you have to have next to your side to do these things. Hell no. Go do them now. And I think that I kind of up leveled doing that for myself by going to this festival. There was 300 plus people there. I knew no one. And a couple years ago, there's no way in hell I would have done it. No way in hell I would have walked into this place by myself, not knowing a single soul. There's no way. And the more I have learned to let go and see how things are going to go and see how things are going to play out and all that, the more I've realized I can do these things. I can take myself out to dinner by myself. I can go to a retreat. I went to a retreat in September and I stayed there for 2 nights by myself. I didn't know anybody. I had a roommate. We hit it off. She was amazing and I had such a great time. And I don't know if the experiences of me doing these things by myself have been so positive because of what I go to, right? So I'm going already to a place where people are already up leveled, right? They're there to be high vibing. They're there to work on themselves, and they're so loving and in the spiritual place. I feel like everybody wants the best for everybody and everybody's trying to help each other out and all that, whatever. So I did not, by the time I got to Texas and by the time I was walking into the festival itself, I was kind of scaring myself, like how calm I actually was. And there was this woman that was like walking by. She was walking by herself. And I was like, hey, are you walking in by yourself? Are you here alone? And she said yes. And we palled around the rest. We were there for 8 hours. We hung out the rest of the time. Now I've got a new friend. Her name is Layla. If you're listening, hey. And we walked in, we both said to each other, like instantly, like soul family. We were just like, I get you, you get me. And everybody in the festival was the exact same way. Like we had to do some work where you had to turn around and talk to somebody, do some partner work, whatever. So I met another girl behind me. She was a blast. And then the other people from the left and right of me, they were a blast. We had so much fun. I had so much fun with meeting the people that were there for the festival itself. Here I am thinking the whole time, I need to meet the guest speakers, you know, like these people are amazing, blah, blah, blah. But I ended up having the best connection, the most fun with the other people that came to the festival. And we had so much fun. A bunch of us did. We met up for brunch. We talked for 2.5 hours the next day. I had to like peel myself out of there because I could just geek out and talk to all these women for so much longer. And my husband was such a trooper, and he was like, yes, go. Because at first I wasn't going to go to the brunch because I felt bad for him. But he was like, no, go. I'll just go do something else. So yeah, it was, but in the moment of walking in there with this new friend that I had made, walking in there was such an up level. I could feel myself. Sometimes I feel like I'm in a video game where I'm like, oh, I made it to the next level. You know, like if I don't know, I haven't played video games in years, but when I was a kid and when I would play like Super Mario Brothers or something like that, when you make it to the next level, sometimes I literally feel that's happening in my life. And when I was walking in with Lena, I just felt like I crossed a new level for myself. I have proven to myself now over and over several times now that I can go into a huge environment and I'll be okay. I'm not going to die. And not only am I not going to die, I'm going to have really good time. And I did. I had such a great time with all these women. And what I realized from there too, another aha moment is I think everyone's craving community like that. Like when you're just all in this area where everyone's kind of feeling a little bit insecure, or everyone's kind of feeling like, because most of the people there came alone. Um, and so I would, you know, I'd introduce myself. I'd meet this person. I meet that person. Yeah, I came alone. Yeah, I came alone. Yeah, I came alone. Each time it was like I was getting another coin in the video game. Like, yes, yes, I wasn't the only one. I wasn't the only one. This was so great. And it just, again, it felt like I was up leveling. It's the only way I can explain it. I have proven to myself that I can do hard things and I can make it out the other side and feel better about it. So, yeah, I don't know what's in the future, like what other gatherings I'm going to be doing. I know that I'm going to be doing them and maybe possibly hosting some of them. I've been talking to my one of my friends. She's like, "You need to have a retreat. We need to do these things because community is important, you know, whatever." And I'm ready. Before it was like, would anybody come? You know, whatever. The right people will come. That's what I've learned. Like that quote, like if you build it, they will come. It does freaking, it's true. It's what it is. I learned that when I built my preschool 10 years ago. I was like, what if I build this huge place and nobody comes? I'm still open 10 years later. It's still thriving. And I built it and they came. The right people came. And these are the things that I have to keep telling myself and talking to myself over and over again, that if I just could release some of the control and the worry, is it going to work out? Yes, it's going to work out exactly how it's supposed to work out. It might not work out the way that you thought it was going to be, but most likely it's going to work out even better. So, yeah, there were quite a few aha moments. Like I said, when I was nearing the end of the trip, the sun came out, it was shining, it was so beautiful. And Todd and I did a lot of walking, a lot of like checking things out, and everything was the way I thought it was going to be. Like I said, because I was trying to control, like leading up to the festival, which was smack dab in the middle of the trip, everything was so tight, and I'm trying to like get through this and not feel so much anxiety or whatever. And all of it was because I was like, all these insecurities are coming through and whatever. And then by the day after the festival, I got my journal and I started to just write and write and write what is not working for me anymore. putting people on a pedestal not working anymore. The way I'm going to be asking people to come on the podcast, it's going to be completely different. It's going to be, my energy is going to be such a positive place that it's going to be easy to attract the right people. They're just going to come into my life, right? The energy is going to be different. I'm not going to be putting these people on a pedestal anymore. We're all the same. We are all the same. I have this in my book, The Missing Piece that I wrote. I remember going to Arizona with my mom. We did a Deepak Chopra retreat like 3 or 4 years ago. I can't remember now. And we sat in a taxi. Kind of was a taxi. Yeah, it was. And the driver was like, we were talking about how he has driven so many famous people over the years because this is his work. This is what he's done. He's made a career out of, driving so many people around. And he was like, all the famous people that you think are just like so up on another level, he's like, they are the same. Everybody is the same, and I logically took that story in. I even wrote about it in the book, but I didn't embody it. An embodiment is everything. When you can wholly put an idea into your mind, you have to put it into the body as well, in your spirit, in everything. You have to embody it in every single cell. And after this trip, I now know what that looks like, what the embodiment of not putting others on a pedestal looks like, because I can feel it now in my whole body. Again, going through another up level, a new level in the video game. It's all the only way I can describe it. And it feels really fucking good. It really does, because now it's like the fear is kind of dwindling away, the ego piece, which the ego always wants to keep us small and keep us safe and not really have any change. But the more that you start to let that dissipate, the more confident and light you feel. So, what are you holding on to that's not working anymore? Just write that down on a piece of paper. What are you holding on to? What patterns are no longer in alignment with you? Your hand is going to start writing a million miles a minute, I can guarantee you. Because again, we're always up leveling, we're always dying to be reborn, right? So there's always going to be things that need to fall away. And those are good things. That's a good thing. Change is good. Change is so good. So, yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this podcast and you took away some of my aha moments and can maybe do a little deep dive into what you're holding on to right now that needs to go. Oh, God, the weight that can just fall off of you when you up level and you go to that next level in the video game. That is the high and the chase that I'm always looking for, because I always want to evolve. I don't want to be complacent and stay the same and small. I just don't. And I hope that you don't either. So thanks again for listening, and I will see you next time.